Hello again. We are fortunate this afternoon that we have the women philosophers of the UPLB Philosophy Division to talk about the to explore the topics that might be part of Filipino feminist ethics. So just a quick introduction. So we will talk about the themes under feminist ethics, and then we will see and we will explore and unpack if it is possible to have a Filipino feminist ethics, and then we will see what issues are needed to be discussed and analyzed under this framework. So I am Cassie Chidosho, again from the UPLB Philosophy Division, and these are my colleagues.
I'm Marga Taganas.
I'm Yula Blanco.
And I'm Janica de Guzman.
Okay, so I think one of the exciting questions to ask in feminist Filipino ethics is how can we trace the history of the idea of a Filipino feminist ethics?
Perhaps we should start by looking at the terminologies itself which form Filipino feminist ethics. Maybe we can discuss first the importance of feminist ethics.
Yeah, so we know that in feminist ethics, we are looking at the inadequacy of the traditional ethical theories, or what we term as the Western, which is male-dominated na theories. So feminists have been arguing that these are actually not sufficient and not fruitful enough, to address women's concerns, especially tayo as moral agents.
So it's more of a field dedicated to criticizing
Yes.
the lack of focus on women's issues, on women's values. So that's why it's necessary to have a feminist ethics that specifically deals with the struggles, the problems, the issues surrounding women's rights, or women in general.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to highlight the significance that this is part of philosophy and Filipino philosophy, since there is also a lot of discourse, contention, and discussions pertaining to what is a Filipino philosophy. So I think it is important to carve the space already at this point on what is the importance and why is it important for us to talk about and to study Filipino feminist ethics. So coming from this framework, do we think there are roots in our history as the Philippine nation, how we can make sense about our Filipino identity, and then as Filipino women, so that later on we could discuss about our particular issues as Filipino women?
It's interesting because from the records, some are saying that meron na actually isang feminist society, pre-colonial period. Our ancestors, hindi natin masasabi na patriarchal, hindi rin siya matriarchal in nature, but in that pre-colonial society, women and men have equally important duties and roles in the society. Yung mga kalalakihan, sila yung mga nag-lead ng communities, di ba? And then the women are, they take the role of the babaylans. These are usually spiritual leaders. Multifaceted din yung role nila, manggagamot din sila. And these are very important roles in the society. Dagdag pa dito siguro, before the colonizers came, women have this certain sense of sexual freedom when it comes to how they present themselves and how they also practice their sexuality. So, magandang tingnan kung ano ba yung mga nangyari from then on, at nakaabot tayo sa state na nandito tayo ngayon.
Yeah, we also have to note that when we look at our history, we're also looking at our identities. I mean, it's important when we try to form or create a kind of identity, na cognizant of our positions as Filipinas. I think it's important to look into and look back sa ating history. And by then, we can see that in the self-sufficient agricultural economies or communities during that time, tulad nga na nabanggit ni Ma'am Jen, they have women and men, they have these various duties, responsibilities, kung saan everyone is equally treated, yung kanilang mga roles sa pag-build ng isang community that time. So like even women, they have these, they occupy sort of a high position in a sense na they are social and cultural leaders. So I think that's very noteworthy and unique sa experience natin mga Filipina. Kasi wala rin tayong, even when you look at our language, there's no like sexual bifurcation or gender bifurcation
Yeah.
when we look at our languages sa mga use natin of pronouns, no? And even nouns.
Yeah. So I think it's important that we started with at least a brief introduction about the pre-colonial history of what's the status and what might have been the experience of women, Filipino women during that time. So then I am also interested with, so what do you think was the impact of the colonial history that the Philippines had undergone as a nation and as a state on the status of women?
The shift from the pre-colonial to colonial times when during the period of Spanish colonization, makikita natin na women were seen as barbaric. Not only women, but Filipinos in general were seen
Witches.
as barbaric. Yeah, witches.
Yeah.
And then they didn't like how women dressed
Yeah.
and the tattoos, no? So, with Christianity as well na dinala ng mga Espanyol dito sa Pilipinas, may kita natin how slowly, eventually, the values changed. So, in that sense, nagkaroon nga tayo, hanggang ngayon, nakikita natin yung Maria Clara ideal, which stemmed from that period of colonization.
Spanish friars were saying that, this babaylan, these women are actually endowed with black magic. Kasi parang they were so bothered and alarmed doon sa kawalan ng division of labor, ng gender natin doon. So in that sense, no, we can see that when with the aggressive indoctrination of Christianity and even Islam, no, Islamic values, no, we've seen how the status of women, no, it eroded. So from the babaylan, so they started looking at women as what they expected us to be submissive, they expected us to be under, the control not only of the government, no, the state, gobernadorcillo, but we are answerable to our husbands, no, to the priests, to the gobernadorcillos, and at the same time sa pinaka gobyerno ng Espanya.
Yeah. And sometimes to the sons as well, because there's
Yes.
there's a premium status if of a woman, even the moment that a woman gives birth to a son, there's a difference in status as opposed to
Yeah.
a woman who cannot give birth to a son and solely to daughters. So because of this peculiar, because you mentioned this yesterday, and I was actually grateful that you mentioned this yesterday, Yula, that we have a peculiar context of having been colonized by different colonial. I don't want to call them colonizers. Yeah, I don't want to call them masters. But I wanted to know, after the colonial history or colonial period in the Philippines, what happened with which years or which era wherein the shift towards the clamor for women liberation started?
Well, of course, even before there was feminism as a formal movement, I mean, alam naman natin na even without that movement, women already began resisting. So it's like, of course, they were trying to criticize, no, yung kanilang kawalan ng space, no, sa public sphere specifically, and they were just relegated to the home, saying that the Filipino woman's location is just the home, no, and the role would only be limited to being just a mother and a wife.
Or a
at least-
madre.
Yeah, so after that, no, because of these resistance ito yung resistance ng mga Filipino women, around 20th century, nagkaroon na ng mga organizations, no, specifically the Asociación Feminista Filipina, no, in 1905, who call themselves feminists. So, of course, no, nandoon yung kanilang goal, which is to criticize, yung existing na mga patriarchal institutions and structures that, further oppress them as women.
So at least we have a good idea. We have a good grasp of our history as Filipino women with the struggles for liberation, the struggles for identity that we are part of. So maybe we can shift the discussion now on the contemporary issues that Filipino women still encounter, but is not largely debated or discussed upon. May that be within the academe or outside the academe.
Roles within the family, for instance, no? Start tayo sa pinaka-basic. Sa bahay pa lamang, may kita natin yung very strict imposition ng gender roles and expectations. So, certain rules and codes are given sa lalaki at sa babae. At of course, operating within this patriarchal system in which men are given a premium and women are treated as weak and should be submissive. Nakikita natin how those rules within the family try to control women's bodies, women's movements, whereas men are given more freedom. So in this sense, when we're talking of equal rights within society, we have to look at the very basic foundations of where and how this equality is understood.
So aside from the family, how about what are your views on marriage? Can it be liberatory for a woman? How can it be liberatory for a woman? Because this remains, some of us still views marriage as an ideal, and we are not saying that just because there is marriage and it is an institution that has been part of patriarchy, that it is something that we should not engage with. So what do you think about it?
Actually,
Jen has views on this as a married woman.
actually, it's interesting to look at it before, during. I don't want to say
Forever.
after marriage.
Forever.
But before getting married, no, especially if a woman is of a certain age, there's this pressure from the society that kailangan mo nang ikasal,
That's
tumatanda ka na, ganyan. And based on my experience, it's not really that intense when it comes sa mga kalalakihan, no, this kind of
pressure,
Kasi
yeah.
it's rooted on this thinking na kailangan mong magkaanak. And merong age limit
Yes.
kung kailan ka lang parang nasa prime mo on giving birth to children.
Yes.
So may ganung pressure before. And then during marriage or once you get married, there's also this pressure to give birth to
Again.
children. Like parang hindi kompleto yung pagiging
Babae at asawa.
babae at asawa
At
mo.
pamilya.
At pamilya nyo, ganun. Kung wala
kayong
kang-
anak.
Kung wala kayong anak, no? So may pressure din na ganun na nanggagaling sa society. And even how the mundane experience of married couples as well, na makikita natin na there's always this expectation from the woman to do the household chores, to
Child work.
to the
Child
child
care.
work, ganyan, no? Parang by default, siya yung gagawa nun. And there's also this expectation from the men na mag-provide at the same time, no? But in cases where parehas na provider yung mag-asawa, the load of those chores and housework really falls on the woman, no? And it makes you question, di ba? Kung parehas na kayo na provider, then why not divide these roles as well? And sige, talakayin na rin natin yung after marriage.
Yeah.
Because usually when couples
after marriage.
get separated,
Okay.
there's this stigma, hindi natin ma-deny, no? That there's this stigma that a woman carries na separada ka, na what wrong could you have done?
So the blame is always on the woman.
I wouldn't say
Always,
always,
but
pero
majority,
oo,
oo.
parang kasi siguro talina din dun sa idea natin ng pagiging good woman, yung konsepto ng purity and something, no, na and I'd connect it to this idea of religion as well, that marriage is supposed to be forever. So there's something na there's a kind of a wrongdoing once you exercise your freedom to actually get out of marriage, especially if it's something abusive or detrimental to you, no? So may mga ganong dinadalang struggles yung mga kababaihan.
Well, to be fair, no, I think we have already come a long way. I mean, kung kanina
Pwede na din.
yung usapan natin was like, okay, this is the pre-colonial Filipina, and then when colonization, no, happened, and then ito na yung estado ng mga kababaihan. But then, of course, while it is impossible, to give a comprehensive, kumbaga, history of the feminist movement, we know, no, that when we look at our contemporary, no, na era, no, it's like people are more open now to talk about these kinds of issues. I mean, compared before. Pero I would really agree, no, with Ma'am Jen, kasi it's when we are talking about marriage, especially in the Filipino context, we know that Filipino people are very, the focus, no, one of our values really is yung familial values. Like, we really value our families, no? Family-centric, kumbaga, no, yung mga Filipinos, they're known for that, di ba? So it's like when we talk about marriage, no, alongside the various, kumbaga, gender stereotypes and expectations on women, we are being faced with multiple vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Firstly, in the anticipation of marriage, tulad niyan. Di ba it's uniquely Filipino how we say na, dapat marunong ka sa household chores kasi iiwan ka ng asawa mo kung hindi ka marunong maglinis ng bahay. Dapat marunong ka magluto. Diba?
Statement
Kaya
na
pag marunong ka magluto, sasabihin, di ba?
Pwede ka mag-asawa.
Pwede ka mag-asawa.
Yes.
As
So
if the
these
point of
kinds
cooking is just
of
getting
remarks, it's like
married.
we are being conditioned. Okay, eventually when you grow up, these are the kinds of rules that you have
Yeah.
to fulfill.
Yes.
And of course, during marriage itself, tama yun, child work, care work. At the end of the day, even companies would reflect yung kanilang mga sexist policies
Yeah.
because women are meant or are geared towards motherhood, no? It's like they wouldn't prefer to hire women kasi
Yeah.
bibigyan mo yan ng maternity leaves, no? Maraming mga leaves yan, tsaka maraming kumbaga interruptions because of child and domestic work.
And even the woman's body itself is a problem for a lot of corporations.
Exactly. So like in a vulnerability naman after marriage was our lack of an exit. So in the context of Filipino society, wala tayong divorce.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's really a very important conversation that we should be doing.
Mm-mm.
That apart from we recognize our religious values, for instance, influencing our ethical, moral, problems and issues, we also might want to consider, ano yung epekto ng pagkawalan ng ganitong choice or exit, halimbawa sa mga kababaihan, not only women, but also their children, yung ganitong klaseng option.
And it's good to note how it's uniquely Filipino, yung kawalan ng divorce.
Yes.
There is a glorification of marriage in the Philippines with its very Christian background. Pero there is a lack of an option to opt out of it
Yes.
or to get out of it once things get wrong, once experience domestic abuse or once
Violence.
that's just one region among the many others, no? So with this being a uniquely Filipino experience wherein you are pressured into coming into this union pero you have no option to get out of it, I think it's one of the important markers of inequality and women's oppression in the Philippines. And hence, when we talk of feminist ethics in the Philippines, or when we try to develop this field called a Filipino feminist ethics, this is one of the main issue that we have to focus on.
Just to add on the discussion of marriage, and then later on maybe we can also touch about the reproductive health and sexuality. It's as if there's no correct decision for a woman. If a woman marries, yes, it's fine, but a woman has to give birth. But that's not enough. You have to make sure that the kids are successful, your husband is successful, you have a beautiful house, and it has to be clean. But when a woman decides not to get married, again, there are also other expectations from that. There is an assumption that, okay, maybe because she's career-oriented, wala nang time for the makapaghanap ng partner or what. But the other thing is that you could not be an ideal woman or a successful woman, whatever you choose, whatever track you choose in life.
It's like what we call the impossibility of being a woman. So it's like you are, parang conflicting, it's like an endless list of conflicting duties. You do this, and you do that, but it's still not enough.
And can we just highlight why? Is there, what might be the reasons why these issues are still here at this year 2023? What do we think are the policies, institutions,
The
social
right
rules?
question is, it would demand a complex unpacking of patriarchy,
Our
sexism.
history.
Yeah, so with the white question, of course, the simple answer is because we live in a patriarchal society. That's why ganito yung mga batas natin. That's why ganito yung paniniwala ng mga tao, the stereotypes, the values. So it affects the kind of life that we are living here, no? Pero I think the more important question we can think about in feminist ethics is how do our feminist ethical concepts, or how do ethical concepts in general, how should they be rethought, or how should they be understood in such a way as to align with our call
Yeah.
for equality?
Yes, I was also thinking about how do we care for ourselves? Having all of these issues and having all of these questions about where's this coming from? Why is this happening to us? I'm thinking, how do we make sure that we at least provide value and care and affection to ourselves that is not necessarily dependent on what society has told us to become.
I think one important step there is information, really, no? Because, and empowerment as well. Kasi a woman can be informed of the possible choices that she might make. Pero kung yung mga tao na nakasurround sa kanya keeps on telling her, no, you should do this, you should do that, no, you shouldn't do this. For example, one of my experiences is this idea of changing your surname once you get married, diba? We see in our society today
Yes.
na we're slowly getting informed. Women are getting informed na hindi ka required
Yes.
magpapalit ng apelyido. And it might just look like a very simple decision, but it's actually something that ties to our identity, to our autonomy as not just as a woman, but as an individual to make a choice for yourself. So ngayon na mas marami ng babae ang nagiging aware na hindi required na gawin to, no? So, hindi nila mafe-feel that they're pushed into a corner when it comes to changing their names on getting married, no?
Yeah.
And that also involves like empowering this person who wants to make that choice. Because if a person wants to make that choice, pero yung mga taong nakapalibot sa kanya ay sasabihan siya na hindi kasi kailangan mong magpasakop sa asawa mo, or it looks like you're not a one united family if you don't change your surname, no? If those are the narratives that the woman is hearing, parang it makes you doubt your decisions, your autonomy. It makes you doubt the choices that you make.
Yeah.
So it's important that we spread this information and empowerment hand in hand.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, we can also like look at kasi when we're talking about autonomy, agency, I think very important lalo sa mga younger generation natin on how being informed, no, regarding their sexuality, yung kanilang bodies, you know. It's very important, no, kung yung kanilang access, for instance, sa reproductive health, no, how do we take care of our reproductive health, for instance, ano yung access natin, ano yung mga choices natin as women, you know. So I think we might want to look into these kinds of intersections din, no, and even in sexuality. Kasi at least also in the Philippines, when like a woman is aware of her sexuality and is not afraid to show, to express, diba? It's like you are being tagged as someone who's too liberal, like you don't
Pakawala.
Oh my God, yeah, like hindi ka na, parang you don't embody, you know, the sort of Maria Clara na image kung saan you are
Babae mong
expected
tao.
to be.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Oh my
I mean,
goodness.
these are uniquely Filipino. Yung mga ganitong remarks natin, kumbaga, di ba? It's very telling on the kind of people, the kind of agents na gusto nila for women. So, yeah, I think this same goes into the idea din na, or the fact that we don't have abortion laws. We don't have options for legal, safe abortions. And even the word abortion, it's sort of like
Very
raises lots of eyebrows when you talk about it.
Offensive.
Exactly,
To a lot of people,
But when we look at in the feminist perspective, for instance, no, it's like you just don't look at the right to life of the fetus.
Yeah.
We look at
The
we
rights
look
of a woman.
the women, we look at the relationships, you know, involved dun sa context na yun, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Kasi just to add on that, kasi it's always as if the blame is almost always on the woman, the choice as well is almost always on the woman without any support system. May that be from our policymakers, may that be from our personal and social connections, because sometimes even our friends, our colleagues still has a very archaic definition or view of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a happy and good woman. Okay, so since we are now nearing the end of our discussion, maybe we could provide working definition to, or a working answer to the question of why do we think we need to carve the space and to start the conversation for a Filipino feminist ethics?
I think there are experiences as a woman and as a Filipina that only Filipinos would understand.
Yeah.
So it's important to create a framework that recognizes our positionality as Filipinos and that caters into addressing these issues that we've just brought up, no? So we can have a nation that also recognizes the rights of a woman and is gearing towards the sense of equality, no? Na hindi lang tayo second sex,
Yeah.
but we're also a vital, our rights are also equally as important as everyone's in the society.
And being a Filipino feminist, no, dagdag ko lang dun, mahalaga na tingnan natin kung paano maaring maintindihan in another way to rethink and to critically assess the Filipino values that we have. Yung mga tinatawag nating Filipino values na kung saan sinasabi kung ano ang mabuting babae at mabuting lalaki.
Gender
Kasi doon
roles.
talaga tayo mag-uumpisa, I think, no? At kasi doon nakaangkla ang pananaw ng iba, attitudes ng iba, behavior ng iba, even the laws and policies that we create. And so, I think mahalagang tunguhin ito, no, that we're trying to talk about the Filipino woman's being
Yeah.
and how she's affected by the different sources of oppression within Filipino society.
Yeah.
And in that way, we carve a space in which we recognize the importance of this positionality, itong ating space as Filipino women, and how we can create solutions that can cater to our needs.
Like on a theoretical level or on a theory level, as philosophers and as feminists, I think a lot of us have already experienced being alienated by Western
Yes.
theory, by Western concepts. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I have this certain experience that is informed by me being, or my identity being a Filipina, but I don't find any theory, any concept, any analysis that could really speak to me as a Filipina. So it's like, I think we really have to recognize, no, that while we want, to develop analysis or theories or like concepts that would be responsive to our own locations, to our positionalities, to the way our social forces within a Filipino society, I think we have to recognize, that if we can't find a sort of a theory or like a concept na kaya nating mag-relate, then we make one. We make
Exactly.
we make sense of our own experiences, using all that we have. Tsaka siguro I think the caveat lang here then is I want us to also recognize that it is not a happy and smooth process.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, in coming to terms with our oppression, even in naming our oppression, it's very important, that we also, kumbaga, in a sense, slowing down and, helping other women to also make sense of their experiences. A lot of us, we were conditioned. Nakakulong tayo sa ganitong klaseng conservative, for example, na family na values. And now that we are starting to, to break free from our, chains of these structures, of these patriarchal institutions, I think it's important na we take things slow. Kasi it's not very easy na okay, my entire life is a lie. Like I've been brought up to chase after these values, tapos in the end I will just learn na okay, I'm more than these things. So I think that we should recognize that empowerment can also come in pain. Like it's a painful process. Hindi laging kapag ka nalaman mo, okay, I'm already an empowered feminist. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. So I think we have been open into the different issues, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, the dulo of the delire when others are talking about it. And we continue in the struggle of making sure that women's issues and women's themes are discussed not only in the academe, but of course all spaces in this world that we are sharing in. So once again, thank you very much for listening to our Filipino Feminist Ethics short discussion. I am Cassie once again from the UPLB Philosophy Division.
I'm
These are-
Marga.
I'm Yula.
And I'm Jen.